Betrayed by her own family, she found hidden success where love once failed. This emotional success story isn't about revenge, it's about justice born from silence. They say every home has its own kind of quiet. For Maya Ellis, silence wasn't peace, it was punishment. She grew up in a house of mirrors. Polished floors, framed smiles, and walls that echoed with words never meant to be heard. Her father, Charles Ellis, ran his life the way he ran his company, by the book, by the numbers, and by the power of his own voice. Her mother, Vivian, lived for appearances, the kind of woman who ironed out emotions as neatly as tablecloths before dinner. And then there was Ethan, the son who glowed with effortless brilliance. The one who could break a vase and still be called precious. The one who made Maya invisible. At 8 years old, Maya stopped expecting hugs. By 10, she stopped asking questions. By 15, she stopped crying altogether. Because in the Ellis household, tears were weakness. And weakness was shame. Her father's words were cold steel. Discipline builds character, Maya. You'll thank me one day. But discipline felt like exile, a world where her mistakes were magnified and her successes dismissed. When she brought home perfect grades, Charles barely looked up from his laptop. When Ethan got a trophy for participation, there was cake. Balloons. Family photos. Vivian would place a hand on Maya's shoulder during these moments and whisper, "Don't make this about you, dear. It's his day." But every day was his day. So Maya started spending her time in the attic, her secret sanctuary. There, she kept a notebook filled with dreams, sketches of buildings, designs, ideas she didn't understand yet. The attic became her world. A quiet rebellion. One night, Vivian found her there, drawing under a flickering bulb. "What are you doing?" her mother demanded. "I'm building something," Maya said softly. Vivian frowned. "You should be resting, not wasting time." And with one swift motion, she tore the page from Maya's hands and threw it in the trash. Maya didn't cry. She just stared at the torn paper like it was a map to a world she might never reach. High school brought no relief. Ethan got a car for his 17th birthday. Maya got a lecture. Her friends didn't understand. "You're so lucky," they'd say. "Your parents are rich." But they didn't know what wealth without warmth feels like. It's a mansion made of frost. The breaking point came at her high school graduation. She stood on stage, valedictorian, diploma in hand, searching for her parents in the crowd. They weren't there. Vivian had a charity luncheon. Charles had a business trip. Only Ethan showed up, late, of course, taking a seat in the back row, scrolling on his phone. When her name was announced, the applause sounded hollow. Maya smiled for the cameras, but inside she made a silent vow, "One day, I'll build something so big, they'll have to see me." That night, she came home to an empty house. A note on the fridge read, "Dinner's in the oven. Cold chicken. No congratulations. No warmth." She packed her bag that same night. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. As she closed the front door, she looked back at the house that had raised her, a house filled with trophies that weren't hers and portraits she wasn't in. And with a whisper that no one heard, she said, "You'll miss me when I'm gone." The city didn't know her name. To the world, Maya Ellis was just another girl with a backpack, a notebook, and nowhere to go. She found a cheap apartment, one window, no heat, a view of the alley. The kind of place where dreams echo louder than footsteps. The first night, she couldn't sleep. Her father's voice haunted her mind, "You'll never make it on your own." But silence has a strange way of reshaping pain. It can break you, or it can sharpen you. For Maya, it did both. Days blurred into weeks. She took a job at a local cafe, pouring coffee for people who didn't even look up when she spoke. But behind the counter, between orders, she wrote. Design ideas. Business models. Plans that made no sense yet, but would someday. Her co-worker, Lena, noticed. "You're always scribbling something," she teased. "You planning world domination?" Maya smiled faintly. "Something like that." Lena became her first real friend, the first person to see her, not just look at her. And in those late-night talks over burnt coffee and laughter, Maya began to feel human again. But even then, she couldn't escape her family's shadow. Every few weeks, she'd see their faces on TV, the Ellis family smiling at galas, her brother giving interviews, her father shaking hands with politicians. And every time she saw them, the fire inside her burned brighter. One afternoon, the cafe's owner mentioned a startup nearby was hiring assistants. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. Maya applied. She wore a second-hand blazer and carried her old sketchbook tucked under her arm like armor. During the interview, the founder, Marcus Vale, barely looked at her resume. "Ever worked in tech?" he asked. "No," Maya said honestly. "But I learned fast." He chuckled. "Everyone says that." Maya leaned forward. "I don't say things I don't mean." Something in her tone, the quiet certainty, caught his attention. He hired her on the spot. The early days at Vale Dynamics were brutal. Long hours. Impossible deadlines. Maya did everything: scheduling, cleaning, running errands, troubleshooting software she didn't understand. But she watched. She learned. At night, when everyone left, she stayed. She'd sit by the office window, staring at the glowing skyline, imagining her name on one of those buildings. Every new project was a puzzle, every mistake a lesson. She stopped seeing failure as proof of weakness. It became proof she was still trying. Marcus noticed. He began trusting her with small tasks, then big ones. When the company faced a product crisis, Maya came up with a solution that saved their biggest contract. Overnight, she went from the assistant to the genius who fixed it. And for the first time in her life, someone said the words she'd waited her whole childhood to hear: "Maya, I'm proud of you." But success is never simple. The company grew, and with it came ambition, greed, and betrayal. Marcus started taking credit for her work. Investors praised him for innovations Maya had built. At first, she stayed quiet, old habits die hard. Then one day, she overheard Marcus laughing at a dinner party. "She's talented," he said, "but she's not leadership material. You can't polish every stone into a gem." That night, Maya didn't sleep. The next day, she packed her desk, took her sketches and walked out without saying goodbye. Outside, under the glow of city lights, she felt the weight of both fear and freedom. In that moment, she whispered to herself, "If no one will build my future with me, I'll build it myself." With her small savings and a laptop that barely worked, she started her own company in her apartment. She called it Ellis Innovations, not as a tribute, but as a warning. Every click of the keyboard felt like reclaiming a piece of her past. Every sleepless night felt like proof she was alive. Lena joined her, her loyal friend and believer. Together, they turned an idea into a prototype, and a prototype into a dream. Investors said no. Clients said maybe. But Maya kept pushing. When one small client finally said yes, she delivered so flawlessly that word spread fast. Soon, one project became 5. 5 became 50. And before she realized it, Maya Ellis, the invisible daughter, had become a rising name in the world of tech design. She bought her first office, small, but hers. Her name gleamed on the door in silver letters. When she ran her hand across it, she whispered, "Do you see me now, Father?" The years of silence had ended. Maya had spoken at last, not with words, but with success. But fate wasn't finished. Because somewhere, in the crumbling towers of her family's empire, her name had just been spoken again. And this time, it wasn't forgotten. Success had made Maya's name golden, whispered in boardrooms, printed in magazines, trending on social feeds. But she never forgot what it felt like to be unseen. Every night, she would stay in her glass-walled office long after everyone left, the city lights reflecting her silhouette. Sometimes, she'd catch her own reflection in the window and whisper, "You made it." But her eyes would always add the silent question, "At what cost?" One morning, Lena rushed into her office, breathless. "Maya, you need to see this." On the big screen, headlines screamed, "Ellis Corporation faces bankruptcy amid scandal." There it was. Her father's company. The empire that had once cast her out was crumbling under corruption, mismanagement, and debt. She stared at the screen, no joy, no shock, just stillness. Lena watched her carefully. "You okay?" Maya whispered, "I told them one day they'd remember my name." That afternoon, her phone rang. A number she hadn't seen in years. She'd almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Maya." Her father's voice was hoarse, trembling. "We need your help. The company's on the brink." We could lose everything. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She imagined him sitting there, not as the towering man who used to belittle her, but as someone small, scared. It should have felt satisfying. It didn't. "I'll think about it," she said coldly, and hung up. Her hands were shaking, not from anger, but from the rush of old wounds reopening. 2 days later, she agreed to meet them. Not at their mansion, it had been sold already, but at her office. When they arrived, she watched them through the glass wall before letting them in. Her father looked older, his once proud posture bent beneath defeat. Vivian wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the same way she always had. And Ethan trailed behind them, hands in pockets, avoiding her gaze. "Maya," Charles said, trying to sound firm. "We made mistakes. But your family. We need your support." She leaned back in her chair, calm and composed. "You mean my money?" Vivian interjected softly. "You have every right to be angry, darling, but don't call me darling," Maya snapped. The room fell silent. She took a breath, steadying herself. "For years, you told me I was nothing. That I'd never survive without you. Now you're here because you can't survive without me." Charles tried to speak, but she raised a hand. "I'll help you," she said. "But only on my terms." Her father's brow furrowed. "What terms?" Maya stood, walking toward the window. "You'll transfer every remaining share of Ellis Corporation to me. Publicly. You'll step down. And you'll tell the world the truth that I, Maya Ellis, built the future while you destroyed the past." Vivian's voice trembled. "You can't mean that. We'll have nothing." Maya turned slowly. "You already had nothing. You just didn't know it." Ethan looked up, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Maya. Please. He's still our father." She met his gaze. "Was he ever really mine?" No one answered. The next morning, the press conference began. Flashes of cameras, murmurs, chaos. The room was filled with reporters and business leaders. Charles Ellis stood at the podium, his voice steady but hollow. "Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Ellis Corporation. My daughter, Maya Ellis, will be taking over leadership." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya walked onto the stage, poised and radiant in a sleek black suit. Her father stepped aside, and for the first time in her life he looked smaller standing next to her. She took the microphone. "I was told once that I'd never make it without this family's name," she said, voice calm but resonant. "So I built my own. And today, that name saves the one that tried to erase me." The room erupted in applause. Vivian's eyes shimmered with tears, pride, regret, it was impossible to tell which. Ethan looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Maya didn't smile. She simply said, "Every child deserves to be seen. I just had to become visible on my own." That night, the news played her speech on every channel. Social media called her the Phoenix Daughter. Investors poured in. The company's stock soared. But Maya sat alone in her penthouse, the city lights reflecting on the glass table before her. The revenge she had dreamed of for years was finally complete, yet her heart was strangely quiet. She poured herself a glass of wine and whispered to the night, "Is this what victory feels like?" She closed her eyes and saw her younger self again sitting in the attic, drawing by lamplight. The same girl who just wanted to be loved. For the first time in years, Maya wept. Not for them, but for the girl she used to be. A week later, she visited her parents. They were living in a modest apartment now, stripped of their former luxury. Vivian opened the door, eyes red but hopeful. "You didn't have to come," her mother whispered. "I know," Maya said softly. "But I wanted to." They sat in silence for a long time. Charles avoided her eyes, his hands trembling as he sipped tea. Finally, he said, "You were right. I failed you. I was proud of the wrong child." Maya looked at him, not with anger, but with quiet strength. "You didn't fail me, Father. You built the walls I had to climb. And because of that, I learned to fly." As she left, she paused at the doorway. Her mother reached out, touching her arm gently. "Maya, can we ever start over?" Maya hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Maybe. But it has to be real this time." She walked away, the sound of her heels fading into the hallway, each step lighter than the last. For years, she had dreamed of revenge. But in the end, she realized the sweetest revenge wasn't destroying them, it was proving she never needed them to begin with. Months had passed since the world learned her name. Maya Ellis, the daughter who rose, the woman who rebuilt an empire. Ellis Innovations had become a global leader in sustainable design and technology. Every magazine cover showed her poised and powerful, eyes steady, smile soft. But power, she had learned, was not peace. And peace was harder to earn than any success. In her office, late one evening, she stared out at the glittering skyline. So much glass. So many lights. So many people chasing something, the way she had once chased validation. Lena knocked gently and stepped inside. "You're still here?" Maya smiled faintly. "You sound like my conscience." "I'm starting to think I am." They laughed softly. Lena sat beside her, glancing at the skyline. "You did it, you know. Everything you said you would." "Yeah," Maya said. "I did." But her tone was distant, her eyes still searching the horizon. Lena studied her. "You don't look happy." Maya turned. "Do you ever reach a dream so big that it starts to feel empty?" Lena thought for a moment. "Only if you built it for the wrong reason." The words hit Maya harder than she expected. That night, she couldn't sleep. She walked through her penthouse barefoot, the city lights flickering across marble floors. Every reflection she passed reminded her of the girl who had once whispered, "You'll miss me when I'm gone." Now they did miss her. But was that really what she had wanted? She sat down and opened the old sketchbook she had kept since childhood, pages yellowed, corners torn, but full of dreams. Blueprints, designs, notes about things that could make the world better. Not to impress her parents. Not to win. Just to create. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered, "I forgot why I started." The next morning, Maya called Lena into her office. "I want to do something different," she said. "Something that matters." Lena tilted her head. "What are you thinking?" Maya handed her a folder labeled Project Haven. Inside were sketches, community centers for underprivileged youth. Spaces filled with art, technology, and mentorship. Safe places for kids who felt invisible. "I want to build these," Maya said quietly. "For every child who felt unseen." Lena smiled, eyes shining. "That's beautiful, Maya." "It's necessary," Maya replied. "Because I know what it feels like to need a place like that." Over the next months, Project Haven became her passion. She visited schools, spoke with teachers, met with children who reminded her of herself. She saw herself in the shy girl sitting alone in the back of a classroom, sketching dreams on scrap paper. One day, after a speech at a youth conference, a small boy approached her. "You're Maya Ellis," he said. "My teacher showed us your story. My parents say I won't ever be anything, but I think maybe I can." Maya knelt down, smiling. "You can, Jacob. You don't need anyone's permission to be great." He grinned and hugged her before running off. For the first time in her life, Maya felt full. Not of pride, but of purpose. Back in her office, months later, she received a letter. The handwriting was trembling but familiar. It was from her father. "Maya, I watched your interview about Project Haven. I saw what you've become. You were right. I was blind, not to your weakness, but to your strength. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to say I'm proud. Dad." Maya held the letter for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. When Charles answered, his voice cracked. "Maya? Hi, Dad." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "You called. I got your letter. I meant every word." "I know." She paused. "Let's have dinner. No business. No past. Just family." He didn't speak for a few seconds, and then whispered, "I'd like that." Dinner was quiet. Vivian was there too, her smile nervous, hands fidgeting with the silverware. Ethan had joined as well, older, humbler, his arrogance replaced by remorse. The conversation started stiffly, small talk, awkward pauses. But as the night went on, laughter began to sneak through the cracks. Stories resurfaced. Not the painful ones, the few good ones they still had. When the evening ended, her father stood to leave. "Maya," he said softly, "thank you. For this. 4. Giving us another chance. Maya nodded. We can't rewrite the past. But we can write what comes next. Vivian's eyes glistened. You've become such a remarkable woman. Maya smiled, not out of pride, but peace. I finally became myself. Months later, the first Project Haven Center opened. Children filled the halls, laughing, learning, creating. And at the entrance hung a single framed quote, "Every child deserves to be seen." Maya Ellis. Reporters asked her what that meant to her personally. She simply said, "It's not about where you come from. It's about who you choose to become." As she walked through the building, sunlight poured through the windows, the same way it never did in her childhood home. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Her revenge had become redemption. Her pain had become purpose. She finally understood, true victory isn't when they regret losing you. It's when you no longer need them to. Every emotional success story reminds us that even after family betrayal, healing is possible. If this story touched you, share it, and stay with us for more journeys of quiet revenge and renewal. Until next time. Rise quietly. Rise fiercely.